Lady Margaret Thornfield adjusted her pearl necklace for the third time as her Rolls-Royce approached the imposing gates of Buckingham Palace. The 72-year-old diplomat had attended state dinners in over 40 countries, but nothing had prepared her for the thick manila envelope that arrived at her London residence 3 weeks prior. Inside were 27 pages of detailed instructions that read more like a military operation manual than dinner etiquette guidelines. The autumn evening cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Margaret's vehicle joined a precise procession of diplomatic cars. Each automobile maintained an exact 30-foot distance from the next, a requirement specified in paragraph 14 of the protocol document. Margaret watched through her window as palace guards in their iconic red uniforms stood motionless at predetermined positions, their timing coordinated down to the second. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the vehicle behind Margaret, nervously reviewing his own copy of the protocol manual. The Chinese diplomat had served in diplomatic posts across Europe for 2 decades, yet he found himself questioning every detail of his preparation. The document specified that guests must arrive exactly 12 minutes apart, with ambassadors from Commonwealth nations entering first, followed by European Union representatives, then delegates from other continents in alphabetical order by country name. Margaret's driver, trained specifically for royal events, navigated toward the grand entrance with practiced precision. The protocol demanded that vehicles approach at exactly 8 miles per hour, no faster, no slower. Palace staff monitored this speed using discrete radar equipment positioned along the driveway. Any deviation would result in the vehicle being directed to a secondary entrance, causing significant embarrassment for the guest inside. As Margaret stepped from her vehicle, she noticed the red carpet beneath her feet felt different from typical ceremonial carpets. Later, she would learn that this particular carpet was replaced every 3 hours during extended events, ensuring that no guest walked on fabric that had been touched by more than 47 previous footsteps. Palace staff counted each step using small sensors embedded within the carpet fibers. Lord Timothy Ashworth, the palace's chief protocol officer, greeted each arriving guest with a bow calculated to last exactly 2.75 seconds. Timothy had practiced this timing for months, using a metronome to ensure consistency. His training included studying film footage of every previous state dinner dating back to 1952, analyzing the precise angle and duration of each bow performed by his predecessors. The first unusual protocol became apparent as guests entered the palace's grand hall. Each person received a small silver card with a unique number corresponding to their assigned position throughout the evening. These numbers determine not only seating arrangements but also the specific order in which guests would walk, talk, and even breathe during certain ceremonial moments. Margaret discovered that her number, 43, meant she would be the 43rd person to enter the state dining room, the 43rd to be introduced to Her Majesty, and the 43rd to be seated. The mathematical precision extended to every aspect of the evening, creating a choreographed experience that few guests fully understood until much later. Ambassador Chen Wei held number 67, placing him in the third wave of introductions. The protocol manual explained that conversations with Her Majesty were limited to exactly 90 seconds per person, timed by discrete palace staff members positioned throughout the room. These staff members wore small earpieces connected to a central timing system, allowing them to coordinate seamlessly without guests noticing their presence. The second unusual protocol involved the mandatory rehearsal that had taken place 2 weeks earlier. Every invited guest was required to attend a 3-hour preparation session at a secret location in central London. Margaret remembered the surprise she felt upon receiving the rehearsal invitation, delivered by royal courier at precisely 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The rehearsal facility replicated the exact dimensions of Buckingham Palace's state dining room, complete with identical furniture, lighting, and even recorded ambient sounds. Professional actors portrayed members of the royal family, allowing guests to practice their interactions without the pressure of the actual event. Margaret found herself rehearsing her curtsy 17 times until achieving the precise depth and duration required by royal protocol. During her rehearsal session, Margaret learned about the third unusual protocol concerning gift presentation. Traditional diplomatic protocol allowed for the exchange of gifts during state visits, but Buckingham Palace had developed an intricate system for handling these exchanges. Guests were required to submit detailed descriptions of any intended gifts 6 weeks prior to the event, including photographs, dimensions, weight, and complete lists of materials used in construction. The palace employed a team of gift assessors who evaluated each proposed present for appropriateness, security concerns, and symbolic significance. Margaret had intended to present a collection of rare English roses from her estate garden, but learned that living plants required additional certification from the Royal Horticultural Society and could only be presented during specific seasonal windows. Ambassador Chen Wei faced similar complexities with his planned gift of ancient Chinese calligraphy scrolls. The palace's art authentication team required detailed provenance documentation dating back 2 centuries, along with written statements from 3 independent experts confirming the scroll's historical accuracy and cultural significance. The fourth unusual protocol involved the palace's approach to dietary requirements and food service. Traditional state dinners accommodated basic dietary restrictions, but Buckingham Palace had developed a system that bordered on scientific precision. Each guest completed a 12-page dietary questionnaire that included questions about food allergies, cultural restrictions, personal preferences, and even family medical histories that might affect food tolerance. Margaret discovered that the palace kitchen employed food scientists who created individualized meal plans for each guest based on their questionnaire responses. Her pescatarian diet resulted in a completely unique menu featuring sustainably sourced North Sea cod prepared with herbs grown in the palace's private gardens. The preparation involved techniques she had never encountered, including aging the fish in specially controlled environments for exactly 72 hours before cooking. The kitchen staff maintained detailed records of every ingredient's origin, including the specific farms, fishing vessels, or suppliers involved in procurement. Margaret learned that her dinner vegetables were harvested exactly 36 hours before the event, ensuring optimal nutritional content and flavor. The timing precision extended to cooking methods, with each dish prepared according to mathematical formulas that accounted for altitude, humidity, and even the number of people in the kitchen during preparation. Ambassador Chen Wei's dietary requirements proved even more complex due to traditional Chinese medical principles regarding food combinations and seasonal appropriateness. The palace nutritionist consulted with specialists from the London School of Oriental Medicine to ensure that his meal aligned with traditional Chinese health philosophies while meeting modern dietary standards. As guests completed their arrival process and gathered in the pre-dinner reception area, few realized that every aspect of their experience had been planned with mathematical precision. The conversations they would have, the topics they would discuss, and even the emotions they would feel had been carefully considered by palace staff who specialized in psychological protocol design. Margaret noticed small details that seemed insignificant but later proved to be carefully orchestrated elements of the royal experience. The temperature in each room was adjusted based on the number of people present, their average age, and the weight of their formal attire. The lighting changed imperceptibly throughout the evening, following patterns designed to optimize guest comfort and photographic opportunities. The background music, barely audible but carefully selected, included compositions chosen for their psychological effects on diplomatic conversations. Palace musicologists had studied the impact of different musical keys and rhythms on human behavior, creating playlists designed to encourage positive interactions and successful negotiations. Ambassador Chen Wei found himself engaged in unexpectedly pleasant conversations with delegates he had previously considered difficult to approach. Later reflection would reveal that the palace's social engineering had subtly influenced these interactions through strategic positioning, conversation starters provided by protocol officers, and even the specific drinks served to different groups of guests. The evening's complexity became more apparent as guests moved toward the state dining room for the formal dinner service. Each person followed their assigned number sequence, creating a procession that appeared natural but had been choreographed with military precision. Margaret walked exactly 4 feet behind the guest preceding her, maintaining a pace of 47 steps per minute, a speed calculated to ensure proper timing for the evening's schedule. The final unusual protocol of this initial phase involved the palace's approach to gift security and documentation. Every item brought into Buckingham Palace underwent screening processes that exceeded airport security standards. Margaret's pearl necklace had been photographed, X-rayed, and chemically analyzed before being approved for wear during the dinner. The security team included specialists in gemology, metallurgy, and even textile analysis who could identify potential threats hidden within seemingly innocent accessories. Each guest's complete outfit had been pre-approved through a process that included detailed photographs and sworn statements regarding the origin of every piece of jewelry, clothing, and accessories they planned to wear. As the evening progressed toward the formal dinner service, Margaret began to appreciate the extraordinary effort involved in creating what appeared to be a seamlessly elegant experience. The unusual protocols, while initially overwhelming, contributed to an atmosphere of unprecedented sophistication and attention to detail. She realized that she was participating in an event that represented the pinnacle of diplomatic entertainment, where every element had been refined through decades of royal tradition and modern innovation. The state dining room doors opened with ceremonial precision as 2 palace guards, trained to move in perfect synchronization, pulled the massive oak panels apart at exactly 7:35 in the evening. Margaret followed her numerical sequence, entering as the 43rd guest while palace staff discreetly counted each person using small handheld devices that resembled elegant jewelry rather than modern technology. The dining room itself represented a masterpiece of protocol engineering that few guests would fully understand during their visit. The famous mahogany table, capable of seating 170 guests, had been configured specifically for this evening's gathering of 96 diplomats and dignitaries. Palace carpenters had spent 3 days adjusting the table's modular sections to create precisely the right dimensions for optimal conversation flow and service efficiency. Each place setting occupied exactly 26 inches of table space, a measurement calculated to provide adequate room for the 7-course meal while ensuring that guests could engage in comfortable conversation with their immediate neighbors. The palace's social dynamics team had studied thousands of hours of dinner party footage to determine the optimal spacing for diplomatic interactions. Ambassador Chen Wei marveled at the precision of his assigned seat location. Unknown to him, his position had been selected based on a complex algorithm that considered his diplomatic experience, language skills, cultural background, and even his documented personality traits from psychological profiles maintained by the Foreign Office. The palace's seating arrangement system accounted for over 40 different variables to ensure compatible neighboring guests and productive conversation opportunities. The fifth unusual protocol became apparent as guests took their seats. Each chair had been adjusted to the specific height requirements of its assigned occupant, based on measurements taken during the mandatory rehearsal sessions. Margaret discovered that her chair provided perfect support for her posture preferences, allowing her to maintain elegant positioning throughout the lengthy dinner service. The chair adjustments extended beyond simple height modifications. Palace staff had analyzed each guest's sitting preferences, noting how they positioned their arms, legs, and back during the rehearsal dinner. This information guided microscopic adjustments to cushion firmness, armrest angles, and even the subtle tilt of each chair back to optimize comfort for its specific occupant. Lord Timothy Ashworth supervised the seating process with military precision, ensuring that each guest reached their assigned position within a 30-second window of their designated arrival time. His earpiece connected him to a coordination center where staff members tracked the movement of every person in the dining room using discrete sensors embedded in the carpet and walls. The sixth unusual protocol involved the palace's revolutionary approach to table service coordination. Traditional formal dinners relied on experienced servers who had memorized complex service patterns, but Buckingham Palace had developed a technological system that guided every aspect of food presentation and removal. Each server wore a nearly invisible earpiece that provided real-time instructions for their specific responsibilities during the meal. The coordination center monitored the eating pace of every guest, ensuring that courses were served at optimal timing for each individual while maintaining overall synchronization across the entire dining room. Margaret noticed that her water glass never appeared empty, despite her not seeing servers approach her seat. The palace's beverage monitoring system used sensors embedded in each glass to track liquid levels, automatically dispatching servers when refills became necessary. This system eliminated the traditional awkwardness of guests needing to request drink refills or servers interrupting conversations to check glass levels. The technology extended to temperature monitoring for both food and the dining environment. Each guest's plate included microscopic sensors that tracked food temperature, ensuring that hot dishes remained at optimal serving temperature throughout the meal. If any plate cooled beyond acceptable parameters, servers received immediate alerts to replace the dish with a fresh preparation. Ambassador Chen Wei experienced the sophistication of this system when his soup course arrived at precisely the ideal temperature for his personal preferences, information gathered during his dietary questionnaire and refined during the rehearsal dinner. The palace kitchen had prepared multiple temperature variations of each course, allowing for individualized service that appeared seamless to guests. The seventh unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to conversation management during the formal dinner. While guests engaged in what appeared to be natural diplomatic discussions, palace staff subtly guided these conversations using psychological techniques developed specifically for royal entertainment. Each table section included a palace conversation facilitator, trained professionals who appeared to be guests but actually worked to ensure productive and pleasant interactions throughout the meal. These individuals had studied the backgrounds, interests, and diplomatic objectives of every actual guest, allowing them to introduce topics and connections that enhanced the evening's networking opportunities. Margaret found herself engaged in fascinating discussions about art conservation with Ambassador Chen Wei and a delegate from Italy, unaware that their conversation had been facilitated by strategic topic introduction from a palace social engineer posing as a visiting cultural attaché. The seemingly spontaneous discussion had been designed to strengthen diplomatic ties between their respective countries while furthering mutual interests in cultural preservation. The conversation management system included careful monitoring of discussion topics to ensure that sensitive political subjects did not create tension during the meal. Palace staff maintained lists of topics to encourage and subjects to avoid for each guest combination, providing real-time guidance to conversation facilitators when discussions moved in potentially problematic directions. The eighth unusual protocol involved the palace's sophisticated approach to photography and documentation of the evening's events. While guests noticed the presence of official photographers, few realized the extent of the documentation system that recorded every aspect of their experience. High-resolution cameras, camouflaged as decorative elements throughout the dining room, captured multiple angles of every interaction, conversation, and reaction during the meal. This footage served multiple purposes, including security monitoring, diplomatic documentation, and analysis for improving future events. The photography system included specialized equipment for capturing images without using traditional flash photography, which could disrupt the intimate dining atmosphere. Advanced lighting techniques and ultra-sensitive cameras allowed for professional quality documentation while maintaining the elegant ambience that guests expected. Margaret would later discover that palace photographers had captured over 12,000 images during the evening, including detailed shots of every course served, every conversation grouping, and every ceremonial moment. These photographs became part of the permanent royal archives while also providing valuable data for protocol analysis and improvement. The ninth unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to gift presentation ceremonies that occurred between dinner courses. Rather than traditional gift exchanges that might disrupt the meal flow, Buckingham Palace had developed an elegant system for incorporating these diplomatic traditions into the dinner service itself. Selected guests presented their gifts during carefully choreographed interludes between courses, with each presentation timed to last exactly 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Palace protocol officers had rehearsed these moments extensively, ensuring that gift presentations enhanced rather than interrupted the evening's rhythm. Margaret's presentation of her estate-grown rose collection took place between the fish and meat courses, allowing her gift to be displayed prominently while guests continued their conversations. The timing allowed maximum visibility for her gesture while maintaining the meal's elegant progression. Ambassador Chanwei's presentation of his authenticated calligraphy scrolls occurred during a planned pause before dessert service, creating an opportune moment for cultural appreciation and diplomatic recognition. The palace's gift presentation system ensured that every offering received appropriate attention while contributing to the evening's overall diplomatic objectives. The 10th unusual protocol involved the palace's revolutionary approach to dietary accommodation that went far beyond traditional food service considerations. Each guest received not only meals tailored to their dietary requirements but also courses designed to optimize their energy levels, cognitive function, and overall well-being throughout the extended evening. Palace nutritionists had consulted with medical experts to develop meal plans that would sustain guests through the demanding social and professional interactions expected during a state dinner. The timing and composition of each course was calculated to maintain optimal blood sugar levels, prevent fatigue, and support mental acuity for important diplomatic conversations. Margaret's pescatarian menu included specific combinations of nutrients designed to support sustained energy and mental clarity. The fish course featured omega-3 fatty acids in concentrations calculated to enhance cognitive function, while accompanying vegetables provided complex carbohydrates for steady energy release throughout the evening. The palace kitchen prepared backup courses for every guest in case of unexpected dietary reactions or changes in appetite during the meal. This preparation required maintaining full alternative menus for 96 guests, resulting in food preparation equivalent to serving nearly 400 people despite the actual guest count. Ambassador Chanwei's traditional Chinese dietary requirements resulted in courses that followed principles of traditional Chinese medicine while meeting modern nutritional standards. Palace chefs had consulted with specialists in traditional Chinese medicine to ensure that his meal supported optimal health and energy according to ancient dietary wisdom. As the evening progressed through its carefully orchestrated courses, guests began to appreciate the extraordinary attention to detail that characterized every aspect of their experience. The unusual protocols, while initially overwhelming in their complexity, created an atmosphere of unprecedented elegance and consideration that elevated the diplomatic gathering beyond traditional state dinner expectations. The technological sophistication underlying the evening's apparent simplicity became more evident as guests observed the flawless coordination of service, conversation, and ceremony. Margaret realized that she was participating in an event that represented the evolution of diplomatic entertainment, where centuries of royal tradition had been enhanced by modern innovation to create an experience that was both timeless and revolutionary. The combination of human expertise and technological precision resulted in an evening that appeared effortlessly elegant while actually representing one of the most complex social orchestrations in modern diplomatic history. Every protocol, regardless of how unusual it might seem, contributed to creating an environment where international relationships could flourish through shared appreciation of exceptional hospitality and mutual respect. The dessert course arrived with a ceremony that surpassed even the elaborate presentations of previous courses. Palace pastry chefs had created individualized desserts based not only on dietary requirements but also on psychological profiles that predicted each guest's preferred flavor combinations and textural experiences. Margaret's dessert featured delicate honey notes that complemented her documented preference for subtle sweetness, discovered through analysis of her dining choices during the rehearsal dinner. The 11th unusual protocol emerged during dessert service when guests discovered that their sweet courses included edible flowers cultivated specifically for their symbolic diplomatic significance. Each flower variety had been selected to represent positive qualities associated with the guest's home country, creating edible diplomatic messages that reinforced international friendship through culinary artistry. Ambassador Chen Wei's dessert featured chrysanthemum petals, symbolizing longevity and nobility in Chinese culture, while Margaret's included roses representing English heritage and diplomatic grace. Palace botanists had spent months cultivating these flowers using soil samples imported from each guest's home country, creating symbolic connections between their homeland and the royal dining experience. The flower cultivation process involved palace gardeners working with diplomatic attaches to ensure cultural appropriateness and symbolic accuracy. Some flowers required special growing conditions that replicated the climate and soil composition of distant nations, resulting in greenhouse complexes that served as miniature representations of global agriculture within palace grounds. The 12th unusual protocol became apparent during coffee service, when guests discovered that their beverages had been prepared using water sourced from natural springs located in their respective home countries. This extraordinary attention to detail required palace staff to coordinate with embassies and cultural organizations worldwide to identify appropriate water sources and arrange for importation under strict quality control standards. Margaret's coffee featured water from an ancient spring in the Cotswolds, while Ambassador Chen Wei's tea utilized water from a mountain spring in Fujian province known for its mineral content that enhanced traditional Chinese tea preparation. The palace's beverage team had studied the interaction between different water compositions and various coffee and tea varieties to optimize flavor profiles for each guest's individual preferences. The water sourcing project represented one of the most complex logistical challenges in state dinner preparation, requiring coordination with international shipping companies, customs authorities, and health inspectors to ensure that each water sample met safety standards while maintaining its unique mineral characteristics that contributed to authentic beverage preparation. Palace beverage specialists had tested hundreds of water and beverage combinations to identify optimal pairings for guests from different cultural backgrounds. This research included consulting with master tea preparers, coffee roasters, and water sommeliers from around the world to achieve unprecedented authenticity in international beverage service. The 13th unusual protocol involved the palace's approach to after-dinner entertainment that seamlessly blended cultural appreciation with diplomatic networking opportunities. Rather than traditional performances that might exclude guests unfamiliar with British cultural references, palace entertainment coordinators had developed interactive cultural exchanges featuring musical and artistic traditions from every represented nation. The entertainment began with a musical ensemble that included instruments and musical styles from each guest's home country, creating a harmonious blend of international sounds that celebrated global diversity while maintaining elegant sophistication. Musicians had trained for months to master traditional pieces from dozens of different cultural traditions, resulting in performances that honored each nation's artistic heritage. Margaret participated in a collaborative musical experience where guests could contribute vocals or simple instrumental parts from their cultural traditions to create a unique international composition. This interactive approach transformed passive entertainment into active cultural diplomacy that encouraged personal connections between guests from different nations. Ambassador Chen Wei found himself teaching traditional Chinese musical concepts to European diplomats while learning about African rhythmic patterns from delegates representing various African nations. The musical exchange created informal educational opportunities that enhanced cultural understanding while providing entertaining break from formal diplomatic conversations. The 14th unusual protocol concerned the palace's revolutionary approach to language accommodation that went beyond traditional translation services. Each conversation grouping included palace linguists who specialized in cultural communication patterns rather than simple word-for-word translation, ensuring that humor, cultural references, and diplomatic nuances were accurately conveyed between guests speaking different languages. These cultural translators had studied not only multiple languages but also the social customs, humor styles, and communication preferences associated with different cultures. Their expertise allowed for more natural and effective communication between guests who might otherwise struggle with language barriers during informal networking opportunities. Margaret benefited from this service when engaging with diplomats from Southeast Asian nations whose communication styles emphasized indirect suggestion rather than direct statement. Palace cultural translators helped her navigate these conversations successfully while maintaining appropriate diplomatic courtesy and achieving productive exchanges of information. The translation services included real-time cultural context explanations that helped guests understand not only what others were saying but also the cultural significance of their communication style, humor, and social references. This enhanced understanding contributed to more meaningful connections between diplomats from vastly different cultural backgrounds. The 15th unusual protocol involved the palace's sophisticated approach to managing the evening's conclusion that ensured every guest departed with positive memories and enhanced diplomatic relationships. Rather than traditional reception endings that could feel abrupt or anticlimactic, palace protocol officers had designed a gradual transition process that honored each guest individually while maintaining overall event cohesion. Each guest received a personalized farewell experience that included private moments with key royal family members, customized departure gifts that reflected their specific interests and diplomatic achievements, and carefully planned departure timing that avoided traffic congestion while ensuring appropriate ceremonial recognition for their attendance. Margaret's departure process included a private conversation with Her Majesty that focused on topics of mutual interest related to garden conservation and heritage preservation, subjects identified through pre-event research as areas where meaningful personal connection could enhance diplomatic relationships between their respective positions. Ambassador Chenwei's farewell included discussion of cultural exchange programs and educational partnerships that could strengthen relationships between Chinese and British institutions, conversations that had been planned based on his documented interests in educational diplomacy and cultural preservation initiatives. The 16th unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to post-event follow-up that transformed single-evening interactions into ongoing diplomatic relationships. Within 48 hours of the dinner's conclusion, each guest received personalized communications that referenced specific conversations from the evening and suggested concrete opportunities for continued collaboration. These follow-up communications included detailed information about programs, initiatives, or cultural events that align with interests expressed during dinner conversations, creating pathways for guests to maintain and develop relationships initiated during the royal gathering. Palace staff had trained to identify and record potential collaboration opportunities throughout the evening. Margaret received information about British heritage conservation projects that could benefit from international participation, along with invitations to future cultural events that would provide additional networking opportunities with diplomats she had met during the dinner. The post-event follow-up system included analysis of conversation patterns and relationship developments observed during the evening, allowing palace staff to identify successful diplomatic connections and provide targeted support for continued relationship development between specific individuals or nations. The 17th unusual protocol involved the palace's comprehensive documentation system that created permanent records of the evening's diplomatic achievements and cultural exchanges. Professional diplomatic analysts attended the dinner disguised as service staff to observe and record significant conversations, relationship developments, and potential collaboration opportunities. This documentation system served multiple purposes, including providing reference materials for future diplomatic initiatives, creating historical records of international relationship development, and identifying successful protocol elements that could be refined and enhanced for future events. The analysis included psychological evaluation of guest interactions, assessment of protocol effectiveness, and identification of cultural accommodation strategies that proved particularly successful in facilitating positive diplomatic outcomes during the evening's activities. The 18th unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to gift documentation and cultural significance recording that ensured every diplomatic gesture received appropriate recognition and preservation. Each gift presented during the evening underwent detailed documentation that included cultural significance analysis, artistic evaluation, and diplomatic meaning assessment. Palace cultural experts created comprehensive reports on every gift's symbolic meaning, artistic value, and diplomatic significance that became part of permanent royal archives while also providing valuable cultural education materials for future diplomatic training programs. Margaret's rose collection was documented through botanical analysis, photographic preservation, and cultural significance reporting that would allow future researchers to understand the diplomatic meaning and personal significance of her gesture within the context of international relationship development. The 19th unusual protocol involved the palace's sophisticated approach to security monitoring that maintained safety standards while preserving the intimate atmosphere essential for successful diplomatic networking. Security personnel, disguised as guests and service staff, provided comprehensive protection without creating obvious surveillance presence that might inhibit natural conversation and relationship development. The security system included advanced technology for threat detection, communication monitoring for diplomatic intelligence purposes, and emergency response capabilities that could address any potential safety concerns without disrupting the evening's diplomatic objectives or social atmosphere. Security planning for the event had required months of preparation, including background investigation of every guest, analysis of potential security threats, and coordination with international security agencies to ensure comprehensive protection while maintaining appropriate diplomatic courtesy and privacy for all attendees. The 20th unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to cultural sensitivity training that prepared staff members to interact appropriately with guests from diverse cultural backgrounds, religious traditions, and diplomatic protocols that might differ significantly from British customs and expectations. Palace staff underwent extensive cultural education programs that included language training, religious accommodation procedures, dietary requirement understanding, and cultural communication pattern recognition that enabled them to provide respectful and appropriate service to every guest regardless of their background or traditions. This cultural preparation extended to understanding diplomatic hierarchies, appropriate forms of address for different cultural traditions, and recognition of potential cultural conflicts or sensitivities that might arise during international gatherings where multiple cultural systems intersected. As the evening drew to its carefully orchestrated conclusion, guests began to appreciate the extraordinary effort and innovation that had created their exceptional experience. The unusual protocols, while initially overwhelming in their complexity and precision, had combined to create an atmosphere of unprecedented hospitality that honored each guest's individual background while celebrating their collective participation in international diplomacy. The sophisticated integration of traditional royal protocol with modern technology and cultural sensitivity had resulted in an event that transcended typical diplomatic entertainment to become a model for international hospitality that other nations would study and attempt to emulate for decades to come. The final phase of the evening began with the 21st unusual protocol, which involved a revolutionary approach to diplomatic gift exchange that occurred after the formal dinner but before guest departure. Unlike traditional diplomatic receptions where gifts might be exchanged briefly and then stored away, Buckingham Palace had created an interactive gift appreciation ceremony that allowed every guest to learn about and experience the cultural significance of presents offered by their fellow diplomats. Margaret found herself participating in a guided cultural tour where Ambassador Chen Wei explained the historical significance of his calligraphy scrolls, demonstrating traditional brush techniques while sharing stories about the ancient masters who had influenced the pieces. This interactive exchange created educational opportunities that enhanced cultural understanding while honoring the diplomatic tradition of gift-giving. The gift appreciation ceremony included professional cultural interpreters who provided detailed explanations of symbolic meanings, artistic techniques, and historical contexts for every present offered during the evening. This process transformed simple gift exchange into meaningful cultural education that strengthened international relationships through shared learning experiences. Palace curators had prepared detailed documentation about each gift that would be preserved in royal archives while also being shared with cultural institutions in the giver's home country, creating lasting educational resources that would continue to promote international understanding long after the evening's conclusion. The 22nd unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to creating lasting diplomatic connections through a sophisticated networking system that continued beyond the evening's official conclusion. Palace staff had developed a digital platform that allowed guests to maintain contact with one another while providing resources for continued collaboration on projects identified during dinner conversations. This networking system included cultural calendars that informed guests about upcoming events in each other's countries, professional development opportunities that could benefit from international collaboration, and cultural exchange programs that aligned with interests expressed during the royal dinner. Margaret received access to a network of heritage conservation professionals from around the world, connecting her with experts in garden preservation, historical architecture, and cultural landscape management who could enhance her ongoing conservation projects while providing opportunities for international collaboration. Ambassador Chen Wei gained access to educational exchange coordinators who could facilitate partnerships between Chinese and British universities, creating pathways for academic collaboration that had been discussed during his conversations with fellow educators attending the dinner. The 23rd unusual protocol involved the palace's comprehensive environmental monitoring system that ensured optimal air quality, lighting conditions, and acoustic environments throughout the evening while maintaining detailed records of environmental factors that contributed to successful diplomatic interactions. Palace environmental engineers monitored oxygen levels, humidity, temperature variations, and air quality throughout the evening to ensure that guests maintained optimal cognitive function and physical comfort during extended social and professional interactions that required sustained mental alertness and interpersonal engagement. The environmental control system included subtle adjustments to lighting color and intensity that supported natural circadian rhythms while enhancing the visual appeal of food presentations and creating flattering conditions for photography and personal interactions between guests. Acoustic engineers maintained optimal sound levels that allowed for intimate conversations while ensuring that background noise did not interfere with diplomatic discussions or cultural presentations that required clear communication between guests speaking different languages or discussing complex international topics. The 24th unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to cultural accommodation that went beyond dietary requirements to include religious observances, cultural celebration acknowledgements, and traditional customs recognition that honored each guest's background while maintaining overall event cohesion. Palace staff had researched cultural calendars to ensure that the dinner date did not conflict with important religious observances or cultural celebrations for any invited guests, requiring coordination across multiple international calendar systems and religious traditions to identify appropriate scheduling that respected diverse cultural obligations. The evening schedule included appropriate time allocation for guests who needed to perform religious observances during the dinner period, with discrete spaces provided for prayer, meditation, or other spiritual practices that were important to individual guests' cultural or religious traditions. Cultural accommodation extended to music selection, decorative elements, and even conversation topics that were chosen to be inclusive of diverse cultural perspectives while avoiding subjects that might be culturally inappropriate or potentially offensive to guests from different religious or cultural backgrounds. The 25th unusual protocol involved the palace's sophisticated approach to diplomatic intelligence gathering that occurred naturally during social interactions while maintaining appropriate respect for guest privacy and diplomatic courtesy throughout the evening's networking opportunities. Professional diplomatic observers, disguised as cultural attaches and academic guests, recorded valuable information about international relationship dynamics, potential collaboration opportunities, and emerging diplomatic trends that could inform future British foreign policy decisions and international engagement strategies. This intelligence-gathering process focused on positive relationship development and collaborative opportunity identification rather than traditional espionage activities, creating valuable insights for diplomatic planning while maintaining ethical standards and respect for guest privacy and confidentiality. The information collected during the evening would be analyzed by foreign policy experts to identify successful diplomatic strategies, cultural accommodation approaches, and relationship-building techniques that could be applied to future international engagement initiatives and diplomatic relationship development programs. The 26th unusual protocol concerned the palace's revolutionary approach to transportation coordination that ensured every guest departed safely and comfortably while maintaining traffic flow efficiency and providing appropriate ceremonial recognition for their attendance at the royal gathering. Each guest's departure was scheduled to occur within specific time windows that prevented traffic congestion while allowing adequate time for personal farewells and final diplomatic conversations that often proved valuable for relationship development and future collaboration planning. Palace transportation coordinators worked with London traffic management authorities to optimize departure routes and timing, ensuring that diplomatic vehicles could travel efficiently to their destinations while maintaining appropriate security protocols and ceremonial dignity for departing guests. The departure coordination system included backup transportation options for guests who experienced vehicle problems or unexpected changes in travel plans, ensuring that every diplomat could depart safely and on schedule regardless of unforeseen circumstances that might arise during the evening's conclusion. The 27th unusual protocol involved the palace's comprehensive follow-up system that transformed the single evening gathering into ongoing diplomatic relationship development through carefully planned continued engagement opportunities and cultural exchange programming. Within 1 week of the dinner's conclusion, each guest received personalized invitations to future cultural events, educational programs, or diplomatic gatherings that align with interests expressed during their conversations at the royal dinner, creating multiple pathways for continued relationship development and international collaboration. Margaret received invitations to international heritage conservation conferences, garden restoration workshops, and cultural preservation symposiums that would allow her to continue developing relationships with fellow conservation professionals while contributing her expertise to global heritage protection initiatives. Ambassador Chenwei was invited to participate in educational exchange planning committees, cultural festival organization groups, and international academic collaboration programs that would enable him to develop the educational partnerships discussed during his dinner conversations with British and international colleagues. The 28th unusual protocol concerned the palace's approach to creating lasting cultural impact through documentation and educational resource development that would preserve the evening's diplomatic achievements while creating materials for future diplomatic training and cultural education programs. Professional photographers, videographers, and cultural documentarians created comprehensive records of the evening's cultural exchanges, diplomatic interactions, and international relationship developments that would be preserved in royal archives while also being adapted for educational use in diplomatic training programs worldwide. The documentation project included interviews with selected guests about their experiences with unusual protocols, cultural accommodation efforts, and relationship development opportunities that had enhanced their diplomatic networking and international collaboration potential during the royal gathering. These educational materials would be shared with diplomatic academies, cultural institutions, and international relations programs to provide practical examples of successful diplomatic entertainment and cultural accommodation strategies that could enhance future international relationship development initiatives. As the final guests departed Buckingham Palace in the early hours of the morning, the success of the unusual protocols became evident through the enthusiastic responses and continued engagement commitments that had emerged throughout the evening's carefully orchestrated cultural and diplomatic experiences. Margaret reflected on her extraordinary experience as her car traveled through the quiet London streets, recognizing that she had participated in an event that represented the evolution of diplomatic entertainment beyond traditional state dinner expectations to create new standards for international hospitality and cultural accommodation. The unusual protocols, while initially overwhelming in their complexity and precision, had created an atmosphere of unprecedented cultural sensitivity and diplomatic effectiveness that honored individual traditions while celebrating collective participation in international relationship development and global cooperation initiatives. Ambassador Chenwei experienced similar appreciation for the evening's innovations as he considered the new relationships and collaboration opportunities that had emerged through conversations facilitated by the palace's sophisticated cultural accommodation and networking systems that had enhanced traditional diplomatic interaction methods. The combination of traditional royal protocol with modern technology, cultural sensitivity, and diplomatic innovation had resulted in an event that would influence international diplomatic entertainment for generations while setting new standards for cultural accommodation and relationship development in global diplomatic circles. The unusual protocols implemented at Buckingham Palace had demonstrated that diplomatic entertainment could evolve beyond traditional approaches to create more meaningful, culturally sensitive, and diplomatically effective experiences that honored diverse traditions while promoting international understanding and collaboration. The evening's success would inspire diplomatic institutions worldwide to examine their own protocols and consider innovative approaches to cultural accommodation, guest experience optimization, and relationship development that could enhance their effectiveness in promoting international cooperation and cultural understanding. Years later, diplomatic historians would recognize this particular state dinner as a turning point in international protocol development, where traditional ceremonial requirements had been enhanced by cultural sensitivity, technological innovation, and psychological understanding to create a new model for diplomatic entertainment that balanced respect for tradition with adaptation to contemporary global diversity and diplomatic complexity. The unusual protocols of Buckingham Palace had created not just a successful dinner party, but a blueprint for international relationship development that would influence diplomatic practices worldwide while demonstrating the power of innovative thinking applied to traditional ceremonial requirements in creating meaningful cultural exchanges and lasting diplomatic partnerships.